Is it rolling?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, probably, you know, in this very early 70s, you know, I started a group with John Sauter and Curtis Heitman and Polly Carmen, and that was actually the first Slink Rand group. And then we kind of merged into the Champaign area, and Curtis was the guitar player and myself, and Polly Carmen was wanting to just sing, but we were auditioning drummers, and we were trying to show a drummer how to play a certain thing, and Polly sat down and started showing the guy how to play, and I said, "Whoa, Polly, you're going to have to be the drummer because you're smoking, man. You're cooking." So that was the way it was. Polly was on drums and singing, and Polar Bear, which is John Sauter, was on bass, and Curtis and I played guitars. And then that group broke up after probably about a year, and I went back and played with Dennis Teakin and Ted Brooks in another Smokehouse group. And then Bernard Kelly called me to come back to Champaign. He would manage us and provide me with a PA and a truck to haul it all around in. So then we brought that evolved into like Jeff Hall and Don Moselli, Mo, and Paul Chamberlain, and Mike Hustler. And we played a long time. You know, of course, the Red Lion and all of the Red Lions, for that matter, the DeKalb and Bloomington and the Champaign Red Lions. And then a lot at Ted's Warehouse in Charleston, but, you know, mainly around the Champaign area. And, you know, it was so neat to be around all the other players in this area that, you know, it was really inspiring to be in Champaign. So then Mo and Jeff left the group, and we got Peter Bailey, who was a very good bass player also. And then Paul left the group, and we got Chris Pyle from Indianapolis to play drums. And that took us up to about 1979 or 80, and that was actually the last, basically the last group that I had in the Champaign area. But I mean, it was so inspiring to be here with all the other players around, and all the, you know, just everything you needed was here. You had the booking agency, you had the stores, you know, that could repair and do anything you needed, and plus just, you know, the general music magic happening in Champaign was just something else. There was so much going on in Champaign, as far as there's the Blytham Agency, and then there's a ton of clubs to play, and the Red Lion, you know, that was the coolest, and there was Ruby Gulch, and man, Panama Reds later on, I think, developed. But there's so many musicians, you know, REO was here, Head East was here, some of them, and you know, the Finchley Boys, George Faber and the Finchley Boys, and Keith Harden and Skater. And well, basically there was there was so many musicians and so many groups and so much going on here musically. I don't know, it was kind of like so inspiring for me, because, you know, also there was, you know, the All-Star Frogs, it was Bill and those guys, and there was just so many different groups, and a lot of different really styles of players that, man, it was just like, you know, so inspiring to be here. And it just seemed like there was always something happening, you know. I mean, a lot of the clubs were running every day, or at least, you know, 5 or 6 nights of the week, and the place was just jumping with music. And then again, the Blytham Agency was a good way to get, you know, gigs, and that's basically the reason. It was just kind of like a magnet for musicians here. You know, it's a university town, and it was pretty jumping, you know. And then C.D. Lloyd, music stores here. There was C.D. Lloyd, and then there was also Cracker and those guys. And you know, anything you needed or anything you needed fixed, you know, hey, you could get it here. And like I had some Marshall heads, and if I wanted something done to those, then you know, you could. You didn't have to send them off. They had, you know, all the people that could just do it right here. And John Gray built guitars. He built me a couple guitars and then worked on them. I mean, everything that a musician wanted was really here. With the manager that I asked to manage us from Blytham, there's this guy at Blytham, and he booked us like 300, I think it was 326 dates in 1 year. So we weren't hurting for work. That was a bit much, but you know, I mean, that's all I wanted to do. Was play. I mean, that's all we wanted to do, was play all the time. I mean, if we played like 5 nights a week, you know, we'd come back to Champaign and we'd rehearse, you know, 1 or 2 of those nights on the nights off. And then I taught some guitar lessons and just music, and it's all I wanted to do. You know, one time it was when there was Jiffy cookers. I don't know if you remember what those were, but they were these little things you could like put 1 hamburger patty in and cook. And we were in Chicago, in the Chicago area, staying at a hotel, and we had a couple rooms, you know. And so we all had one of these Jiffy cookers, and you know, like Mo would grill some onions in his, and you know, we played a week-long job. And by the time we left those rooms, they smelled like Joe's Bar and Grill. And I remember when we left, we were driving off, had some limousines, we were driving off in the limo, and the manager of the hotel had went up and checked our rooms, and as we were pulling away, he says, "You'll never stay in this hotel again, you pigs, you freaking pigs." Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many people to keep you inspired. I mean, you know, there'd always be your regular crowd at the Red Lion, and you know, those people that were just like, you know, rooting you on all the time. It's just like, hey, that's one thing that really keeps you going. Yeah. The Red Lion was probably the hot spot for us. You know, at that time, you know, the Red Lion was the place to be. You know, later on, Mabel's kind of like came about, but I'd say for the most part, the Red Lion was the hot spot. To me, you know, Champaign was you know, you got to understand, I come from like Podunk City, so like Champaign was like quite on the map for me. It was a place that, you know, I went to a rock festival at Hayworth many moons ago, and there was a lot of Champaign groups at that event. And so that was one of my first introductions to Champaign and the music coming out of here. You know, there was everybody, the Finchleys, Head East, REO, there was it the Guild, maybe? And, you know, I can't even remember all of them. I think there was a group called Fatwater or something that was from here, if I'm not mistaken. And, you know, and then to come here and see all these groups in action and then be a part of it was you know, this was quite a place on the map for me and for a lot of people. This is, if you're talking about Illinois music, Champaign is one of the places that is known. I would say that if you want to find out what's happening musically, investigate Champaign, because there was just tons of unique and tremendous music that come out of the area, and still is. Okay. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that things were so know, blended together here is, I think because it's a university town, that had a lot to do with it, has a lot to do with it. And because of that, then you have quite a bit of Chicago, you know, there's a lot of Chicago people that come to Champaign for school. And so you got a bit of Chicago here. And then, you know, it's centrally located in pretty much in the state. And, you know, the accessibility. And I think those things, along with the booking agency situation, the recording, you know, there's good studios here, and there was then, and just for whatever reason, the magic is here. I mean, I think all of those things contributed. And I think as it began, as it got the initial start, I think it grew and grew, you know, just under its own power. I mean, it just kind of developed because there was so many influential people here. I think really it was more of the whole picture for me, you know. I mean, I didn't have there wasn't like really any band that really influenced me to the point where, wow, I want to sound like them or something. I mean, I've always pretty much been my own, you know, I don't want to sound like a tape machine. I more get my influence or the drive from being around other people just in the feeling that I get from it. You know, like you know, you see somebody playing and they're really good at what they play. I get a spark out of that. I mean, it's like, it's not so much that I want to learn that lick. I want to play that thing. It's more like, man, he's really got a good attitude about it, and I like that. You know, I should be more like that.
Yeah.
That's more how I got my inspiration. It's like,
who did you, just out of curiosity, when you were growing up learning to play guitar, did you have somebody that you were listening to records and
oh, well, you know, of course Clapton and Beck, you know, and Pagey, and, you know, those guys were, you know, they were the main men back then, you know.
I was going to ask you too, what was your favorite, do you ever have a favorite Champaign show, whether it was a Red Lion or Assembly Hall, this show that sticks out in your mind, like, man, this is...
That we played, or that I just saw?
Played?
Oh, that we played. I know probably the worst one. All of it, their average white band played at the Assembly Hall, and their opening act couldn't make it at the last minute, so we filled in for the opening act. And they didn't care for us. I mean, they didn't throw stuff at us, but I was pretty glad to get off the stage for that. So that was maybe the worst. Now the best, it was probably one of the Red Lion gigs. Those were always pretty cool.
Well, I think that's good, Frank.
I think that's okay.
Yeah.